Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Yulia and I am a developer advocate for Vonage. But tonight I am fortunate enough to be part of a panel of inspirational women who are going to talk to us about what it is like to switch to tech coming from a different career. So without further ado, please let us meet our panelists tonight, Faduma, Faye, and Natalie. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourselves? Um, where did you start? How your careers have been so far? And what do you do now? Let us start with Faduma.
Hi, I'm Faduma Hussein. I'm a back-end developer at Totally Money. I started off my career in marketing just after I finished university. And then I went to Makers Academy after kind of working at an events marketing company. I realized I was more interested in what the conferences were about rather than planning them. So I decided to kind of network with more developers, and I started going to tech events such as Code Bar, which kind of taught me more about other kind of avenues in life, I guess. And that's kind of when I learned about the career switching opportunities of coding boot camps. And yeah, so I went to Makers in September 2019. And I finished in January 2020. And yeah, I got my first job as a back-end developer at Totally Money just about a year ago.
That is amazing. Thank you. How about you, Faye?
A bit like Debbie, actually. I started, I've done like so many different things. I started as a carer, and I also worked like in the evenings and weekends selling door-to-door makeup and stuff. Then I was a mentor for autistic children. Then I was a special needs teacher, and then I started an apprenticeship in business admin at a transport company. And then I was a special needs teacher again. And then that was for a while actually. And then I just kind of made a career leap into being an executive assistant in fintech. That role got made redundant, and now I'm a freelance tech writer and front-end developer. And I'm looking to join a company as a developer advocate. So yeah, I've done a lot of different things.
That is definitely impressive variety. How about you, Natalie?
Yeah, so I didn't do quite as many things as Faye did, but I started my career as a management consultant in the financial services industry. I did that straight out of uni, joined their grad program, and I stayed there for a few years. And then I decided that I wanted to move to a fintech in the kind of business credit space as a project manager. And I did that for a year before I decided to do the same boot camp actually that Faduma did, Makers. So we were both on the same course actually in September 2019. And I also graduated January last year, and then found RVU through Makers and have been working there ever since for a year now. I work mainly on our USwitch website on kind of rolling out new features, integrating with third-party tools and fixing bugs. So yeah, really enjoying that and using sort of mainly JavaScript, React and TypeScript.
Sounds like you're having a lot of fun. So I was wondering, a couple of you, well, all of you had a lot of variety, historically speaking. And Faduma even mentioned that she was more interested in the content of the conferences and events than putting them on. So could you please tell us a little about what made you consider a change? What was that moment that made you realize that you wanted to transition to tech?
So while I was at my previous company, It was a really small company. There was about 20 of us, so we kind of all did everything. So I started working a bit on the website and learning WordPress and just basic HTML, CSS. And then the company would also just put on these international workplace tech events. So I got to meet other developers, and through those events, that's when I met some people that had also completed Makers and other boot camps. And I guess that was the moment when I realized that it was possible to transition into a career as a software developer, because I kind of always just assumed that you have to go through the traditional university computer science route. I didn't really know anyone that had kind of either was self-taught or went through a boot camp. So that's kind of when I decided to just kind of have a look at just doing some research about boot camps, and started kind of teaching myself some like basic JavaScript and things just at home after work. And yeah, so I guess that was kind of the moment when I realized that it was possible to kind of have this switch into a career in technology.
That sounds great. So you started doubling into it and found that you loved it. So it's always great to hear that. You mentioned that you've done the same boot camp as one of the other panelists. So let's hear more about that.
So Natalie and I actually went to Makers together. So we started in September 2019, and that was just a boot camp mainly focused on Ruby, and there was a bit of JavaScript also included. So that was a 3-month program on site, and we both finished that in January of last year, and shortly kind of found both our jobs around the same time.
That's amazing. Thank you. So happy to hear that. So Faye, how was your transition like? What was that moment that made you take the leap?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself, sorry. Well, my change from my previous role into tech wasn't really my choice. The role got made redundant. I'm careful to say that the role got made redundant, not I got made redundant, because I didn't. I was good at my job. I was working with the marketing department, which I found quite fun, and I was doing executive assistant type stuff, and I was an office manager, and I was good at it. So the role got made redundant, not me. But yeah, so that wasn't a choice that I made. But pandemics happen apparently. So yeah, it was kind of forced kind of the change. But why tech? Why would I go into tech? I think if I look back at the change that I made before that, when I went from a special needs teacher into fintech, that was because I wanted to learn something different. Like I'd worked in schools with special needs children for a long time, and I wanted to learn something new. Like I've always wanted to learn more and that kind of thing. So then I think that's what prompted me to go into business again, kind of thing. So then when that suddenly finished, I had to think about I felt sorry for myself for a while, but then I got over that. And I just thought, like, I want to carry on learning, and like Debbie said, you're always learning in tech, and it just kind of made sense. And I've always enjoyed writing and marketing and stuff like that. Like I said, I was sort of involved with the marketing department in my last role. But yeah, and I've kind of amalgamated all of those things. I like learning, I like marketing, and I like writing and creating stuff. So it all just came together, and I was like, I'll start learning JavaScript and just see where it takes me. And yeah, that was kind of it. Now I'm learning React. I'm working with a startup using Vue. I learned Git and Git workflows. Yeah, I've just kind of been flapping around, I think, and learning everything, and I just enjoy learning new stuff. So I think it wasn't a conscious change, like it wasn't a deliberate change, but it just kind of circumstantial, I think.
I think it's amazing how you touched on it, that you were working with kids and then you wanted to learn more. And I'm sure you also, well, you mentioned that you took all the things that you enjoyed and were good at, and then looked in tech into a sort of a role that also uses those skills. So you found a lot of them to be translatable. I was wondering if our other panelists have found the same experience. Natalie, what do you think? Did you have a certain set of skills that developed in the previous jobs, opportunities, that you took into tech, and while not exactly something specific to tech, but you found them to be really useful applying them in this industry?
Yeah, for sure. I think actually in tech, softer skills are really important. So I think there's a misconception sometimes from people who are outside the industry, maybe, that it's, you know, super technical, and obviously it is technical, but, you know, soft skills don't matter as much. But I think something that was transferable from my previous roles was, you know, communication and collaboration, because ultimately working as a software engineer is highly collaborative, and it's a lot about teamwork. So yeah, you also have to be able to communicate your work to non-technical stakeholders as well, so they understand the value of what you're doing. And I think ultimately it's about problem solving. So I think in most jobs there is an element of problem solving, and I was in consulting and project management, so, you know, there was a lot of problem solving there. It might not have been the same subdomain, definitely wasn't like as, you know, technical, but ultimately I still had to break down a problem into smaller component parts and plan how I was going to tackle that problem, which is very much a big part of the work that you do as a developer.
Definitely, those are some excellent points, and I'm so happy to see more and more people be vocal about them in the tech industry. Does anyone have any other transferable skills they would like to talk about? Or maybe something that you took from a previous role into tech that surprised you and you found helpful?
I think, like what Natalie was just saying, the ability to communicate with people that aren't technical. I mean, even though I've been doing it for like a year now, I wouldn't consider myself as technical, but I think having worked with special needs children, I think I've got the ability to explain what is now quite complex things, like really break it down. I you know, it's going from knowing how to explain to a child that can't speak and can't do anything, that I need them to put their shoes on, but now I'm explaining to non-technical people what Docker is and what Vue is and what a framework is and things like that. So yeah, I think like Natalie said, communication with non-tech people.
That is an extremely valuable skill to have, definitely. That's what I always try for, like trying to explain, like I'm talking to a 5-year-old. Yeah. That's a really, really nice thing to have. Faduma, do you have anything to add?
I think kind of what I took from my previous job in marketing was just learning to work, I guess, collaboratively. At the moment, I'm in a team of about 5 other developers. So it's kind of everyone doing everything at the same time. It's a bit, it gets a bit hectic, I guess, at times, because it's just picking up whichever tickets are there. And I guess sometimes the roles aren't defined as clearly, but I guess that's also like helped me to just, I guess, like learn the stack more, because I'm currently coding in F#, which is like a functional language, which is quite different from what I did at Makers and what I was kind of teaching myself before Makers. But I guess like also working within that team has like allowed me to learn this new stack, and a lot of pair programming has also helped me to do that. So I've just like learned how to work more collaboratively.
I love that you touched on that. Like, communication skills and soft skills, like all three of you highlighted, are extremely important, and working together is at the base of everything. So thank you so much for that. Another thing I would like you to touch on is, if you were to give yourselves a piece of advice before making the change, or what would you do differently if you could go back in time? How would you approach the switch knowing what you know now? Feel free to start it off, Faduma.
Oh, I was gonna jump in, but Faduma,
yes, please.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll start. So I would say, I think before I started the switch, I was quite worried. I spent a lot of time worrying about which language I should learn first. And I think that was one of the sort of decisions around Makers that I was sort of wary of, because I was like, oh, they teach it in Ruby, but it's all about JavaScript these days and React. So I feared that learning Ruby first would mean that potentially I sort of started off on the wrong foot. But I guess knowing what I know now, I would tell myself that doesn't really matter. Like, what matters is just learning a language. Languages like come and go in and out of fashion. And ultimately it's more around learning the thinking process of breaking down a problem, and most languages have very similar principles and the same fundamentals. So it doesn't really matter what language you start learning in, and to be honest, like, I'm using languages now that I hadn't used before, and it doesn't matter because you'll pick them up as you go. And I think something I would have done more is just be braver and asking more questions. And I probably would have asked the developers that I worked with in my company more questions at the time, and just not been shy to do that.
Thank you. That was an amazing point. I really do wish I had known that before getting started in tech. Anyone else have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I think just following on from what Natalie was saying, I just kind of wish I knew to be braver and just to kind of ask other senior developers on my team if they want to pair, even if it's on, something quite small or anything really. I think it's just important to just ask those questions. And I mean, they're always willing to help, and it's better just to kind of just ask if you're, feeling stuck on something, or just for someone to look over your code, or just give you feedback on a pull request. I think that's really important.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna ask you, so thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was just gonna. Yeah. I mean, the same as Natalie said. Just not worrying so much in the beginning about what language. I wish I just bought a course and got my head down and stuck with it. Also sticking with it rather than being like, oh, I learned that now, and now I learn that, and I learn that, and oh, that person's doing that. Like, I was just all over the place. I think sticking to one thing and learning the fundamentals. I think I learned JavaScript fundamentals quite quickly, and that has helped to kind of mean that I have been able to jump around, but I wish that I hadn't so much in the beginning. I think it's better to just stick with one, and I don't think I should have asked more questions. I think anyone that follows me on Twitter knows that I ask a lot of questions. I kind of use it like Google, which is quite fun, but yeah. Yeah, sticking to one thing and not worrying so much about which language to learn.
Thank you. I'm really glad that all three of you touched on that. I definitely did experience an analysis by paralysis by analysis, as in trying to figure out where to start and going so deep down the rabbit hole and anxiety that comes with it. So thank you for all the valuable advice that you shared this in this evening. If anyone has any questions, then please find our panelists in Gathertown.